Hi, I'm Heidi and welcome to my channel. This channel is all about learning Finnish and learning about Finland. In this video, we are going to focus on the question how to study in Finland as a foreigner. This is something that many of you have requested, and I have done some research to bring you the most useful resources that you can use when you want to actually plan moving to Finland and studying there. Let's get started. But first of all, just a quick disclaimer. I'm a Finnish teacher and I'm doing my best now to bring you the resources and the information that you will need to be able to take informed decisions about your future or about your career choices, but you will need to do your own research as well. First of all, we need to make an important distinction between EU citizens and non-EU citizens. Why does this matter? This matters because the tuition fees are very different and also the way residence permits are handled is very different. And there are also different financial requirements depending on these factors. If you are an EU citizen or an EEA citizen, meaning that you either come from a EU country or from Switzerland, Norway, or Iceland. In these cases, you do not need to pay tuition fees in any programs. At least usually you do not have to pay. You can move to Finland relatively freely. You do not need a visa, and you simply need to register your residence. If you would like to learn more about how you can register your residence in Finland, you can check out my other video that I made, including how to work in Finland and how to get your paperwork in order. You can check out the link that I'm leaving above, and also I will leave the link in the description. However, it's really important to also count that you have to have enough money to live in Finland. Finland is not especially cheap, so you need to make sure that you have enough savings for daily living in Finland. If you are not from the EU, the things get a little bit more complicated because you must pay tuition fees for English taught bachelor's and master's programs, and they can amount up to 20,000 euros per year. So normally varying from 8,000 to 20,000 euros, depending on your program. The studies in Finnish and Swedish, however, are completely free of charge at the moment when I'm recording this video. However, normally you need at least B1 or even B2 level to be able to attend these programs. You also will need a residence permit for studies, and you need to apply for this residence permit before entering Finland. You must prove that you are financially able to support yourself and to pay for your living in Finland, apart from these tuition fees, right? So if you are planning on studying in Finland in English, you need to calculate enough savings both for the tuition fees that are yearly and also for daily living. Also, this is where many people underestimate the requirements. Many people think that studying in Finland is free or cheap, but it's free or cheap only for European citizens, generally speaking. One very important thing that many people are not yet aware of is that tuition fees will apply to all non-EU students who start their studies on August the 1st in 2026 or after this date, and who arrive to Finland or have been granted a residence permit for studies. Still, at the moment and earlier, it was possible to study in Finland for free if you were studying in Finnish or in Swedish and you came from another country outside of the EU. But it seems that this is about to change very soon. So if you are planning on applying for Finnish or Swedish studies or programs, you need to take this into account because you might have quite high fees that weren't there before. It's not completely clear yet how much you would have to pay for vocational studies in Finnish and in Swedish if you are not a European citizen. But it might be something between 6,000 euros to 20,000 euros per year. And sometimes the fees might be even higher depending on the program. Based on the resources that I read, doctoral programs do not charge tuition fees regardless of nationality. Now, I'm not 100% sure if this is something that's gonna be true also in the future, because as I said, the legislation is about to change. And as far as I understood, it's going to affect at least vocational studies, but I was not able to find clear information on whether it might also affect doctoral programs in the future. So if you're planning on studying in Finland and you are coming from outside of EU, check out the resources that I'm gonna leave under this video and also do some extra research to find more information about that. Also, if there are any people who are watching this video and know more about this, please comment and let other people know as well what's the situation nowadays. Scholarships. The tuition fees are expensive, but luckily there are some options for scholarships. But they are limited and also highly competitive. And they often only cover part of the tuition. So if you're planning on studying at a Finnish university, it might be a good idea to actually try and apply for scholarships. You can find more information about them and how to apply via the links that I'm gonna leave in the description. You can find all the references in the description. So please check them out after this video. But you should never fully rely only on scholarship when you're thinking about relocating, because scholarship can cover part of the costs of the tuition, but it won't cover your daily living costs, and it might not even cover the whole tuition fees either. Cost of living. I mentioned this already several times, so what does it actually include? In Finland, well, in general, the living costs are quite expensive. The rents are expensive, and even though there are some options for student housing that are relatively affordable, they could be from like 200, 300, 400 euros above. If you have to rent a regular apartment, which is not specifically for students and like shared apartment, then you normally have to pay several hundreds of euros, like I would say from 600 onwards. If you are renting a studio, it could be at cheapest maybe like 600 euros a month, depending also on the area. If you live in some small area, maybe it could be a bit cheaper. But I think at least in the capital area, the price is pretty much that. Like, it's pretty much impossible to find anything below 600 euros per month. And often it's even more. Then food, of course, has to be counted. I would say that maybe it's a good idea to count at least a couple of hundreds of euros for food per month, depending also on your personal preferences, of course. If you prefer to cook like basic food at home and you really calculate very precisely how much you're using and you choose the cheapest option, it could be maybe less. If you eat a lot out, then of course you have to count even more than that. But I would say at minimum calculate maybe 200 euros per month for food for one person. Transportation. I would say this depends also a lot on the area. If you are a student, you can join a student union, which gives you a lot of discounts. Also, it often includes discounts on transportation. At least if you are in Helsinki, Espoo or Vantaa, which together form the capital area, you have discount on transportation with the student union membership. The cost of transportation depends on where you live. Let's say if you live in Helsinki and you're studying in Helsinki, well, then the transportation cost, of course, is a bit less than if you, for example, lived in Vantaa and study in Helsinki. But I would say approximately with the student discount, the cost of transportation could be around 70 euros, probably a bit less, maybe like 66 euros if you commute between, let's say, Vantaa and Helsinki or Espoo and Helsinki. But it could be also a bit less. Health insurance. You absolutely have to get a health insurance if you're moving to Finland. And for students, according to my understanding, at least if you are part of the European Union, then you can sign up for health insurance that is offered by your university. And currently it's around 35 euros per term, which means about 70 euros per year. I think this might also depend on where you are studying, and it might depend on the institution. I'm not sure if this is the same price for everybody, and if you have to pay more if you come from outside of the EU, it might be. But at least at minimum, you have to pay this amount. And then there's this annual student union, which is about 50 or 70 euros per academic year. And it gives you a lot of discounts. In most cases, you actually have to pay for this student union fee. In some cases, it might be optional, but you definitely should pay for it because it gives you a lot of discounts and it will pay itself back. If you use transport, if you go to restaurants, if you go to museums, etc. And then also you need to calculate expenses for daily life, like hobbies and so on. In total, it's recommendable to count between 900 and 1,200 euros for monthly expenses in Finland. Again, it might be more, it might be less, but with this amount of money, you should be able to live nearly everywhere in Finland if you count your finances very carefully. In Finland, there's also something called toimeentuloedellytys, which means the means of support requirement. This is a very official term, but it means that if you come from a country which is not part of the EU, and it's not Iceland, Norway, or Switzerland, in that case, you need also an official minimum amount, which according to the Finnish Immigration Service, Migri, is 800 euros per month for living expenses. And according to studyinfinland.com, it's recommendable to have at least approximately from 900 euros to 1,200 euros per month, depending on the location. And also bear in mind that this sum does not include studying expenses. If you need to pay for tuition fees, you have to count money for that separately. And this is the minimum amount. I would save up more just in case, not to be too tight on money, but this is like the absolute minimum you should have before coming here. Working while studying. A common misconception is that people think that I will just work part-time and support myself. Whereas in reality, there are some limitations for how much students can actually work in Finland, and jobs are not guaranteed. International students are allowed to work part-time up to 30 hours per week on average during the academic year and full-time during holidays. So you cannot even work full-time if you are studying. And it's also pretty hard to work full-time if you're studying full-time. Apart from this, jobs are not guaranteed. Right now we have very high unemployment in Finland. Actually, Finland became the most unemployed European country a couple of months ago. So the situation is not good. It's not easy to find jobs, even if you are a Finn. And if you are an immigrant who does not speak Finnish, then the situation is even harder. However, there are some possibilities for internships, but there are also real challenges that many immigrants are facing. Many jobs require Finnish language, and if you do not speak Finnish, at least at an intermediate level, then it limits your job opportunities a lot. Also, there's very high competition on jobs right now. As I just said, we have very high unemployment rate. So if you are looking for a job as an immigrant, you're competing against all other immigrants who are looking for a job. And also you are competing even against native Finnish speakers who might have years and years of experience because they just got laid off. And then there are options for part-time work, but in reality, usually if you work part-time, it does not cover all the living costs yet. That's why you should not depend fully on working to survive if you're planning to come to Finland for studies. You should also always have some savings that you can rely on studying in Finnish or in Swedish. This is also possible in Finland, and education is usually free in these languages, but only until August 2026. After that, it's gonna be free still for Finns and apparently for those who have a permanent residency in Finland, and it's gonna be free also for those who come from other EU countries or from Switzerland, Iceland, or Norway. However, if you're planning on studying either in Finnish or in Swedish, you need to have sufficient language skills. And normally that means that you have to be either at B1 or at B2 to be able to study in that language. What does it mean in practice? It means that you are not a beginner anymore. These are not beginner levels. B1 and B2 are intermediate levels. If you would like to learn more about what these language levels mean and how to understand at what level you are, you can check out my other video above. At these levels, you should be able to understand lectures, write assignments, and communicate in everyday situations. And in most cases, if you are studying in Swedish or in Finnish and you are not a native speaker and you have not studied in these languages in Finland before, you also need a proof of language skills, which, for example, could be the official YKI test for Finnish. I will also leave a bit more information on YKI in the description. Vocational education. This is something that many people are asking about, and in Finnish we can call this ammatillinen koulutus or ammattikoulu. Ammatillinen koulutus means vocational education, and ammattikoulu means a vocational school. What is it? It's different from universities, and vocational schools focus on practical skills. For example, you could learn nursing or become a practical nurse, which in Finland we call lähihoitaja. This is also a profession that is highly on demand right now because our population is getting older and older, and we need more and more people to be able to take care of the elderly people, and also in general we have a lot more demand on the health sector than we used to have. And also this is something that you might consider if you are thinking what career you could study in Finland. This is something that where we actually have a lot of need in the future and at the moment as well. Also, you might learn construction-related things, or cooking, or cleaning services, mechanics, or logistics in vocational schools, just to mention a few. So, in general, the study path is often more hands-on compared to academic studies. Also, the duration of vocational education can be considerably shorter than in many academic studies, and that makes it quite appealing for many students and also for many international students. But an important factor, most vocational programs in Finland are taught in Finnish. This usually means that you need at least A2 or B1 level of Finnish. Sometimes even higher, especially in fields like healthcare. In healthcare, you have to be working with patients all the time, and often with elderly patients who might not speak English at all, so you cannot rely on English at work. It has to be fully in Finnish, and you have to be able to understand healthcare-related situations very well in Finnish. That's why good language skills are a must if you're planning on working in healthcare in Finland. Application periods. This is something that confuses a lot of people, and not only immigrants, also we Finns are sometimes confused by these application periods and requirements. The reason is that basically all schools have their own, let's say, rules of application, and they might have different times for application as well. So you really need to check out the specific requirements of the degree or the studies or the program where you are planning on applying. But I can say a few general things about this, and I will also leave this link opintopolku.fi below in the description. There you can read more in English about the different options that you have. This is the official portal where you have to apply. In general, universities and universities of applied sciences, which we call yliopistot ja ammattikorkeakoulut, have an application period of January. Normally, the application is in January, all right? Yliopistot means universities, and ammattikorkeakoulut, universities of applied sciences. You might also come across with the term of yhteishaku or joint application in English. This is basically how we call nowadays the application period, because you can actually use one application for several degrees or for several programs, and that's called yhteishaku. Studies typically start in August or in September. And when it comes to vocational education, applications can be more flexible. There are some vocational schools that have multiple application periods per year, and some may accept students on a rolling basis as well. But this depends completely on the school and on the program. So make sure to check the exact requirements well beforehand, and you can find all the exact requirements and all the study options via this link here. Let's have a few words on a residence permit, because this is a very important factor for those of you who are not EU citizens. The requirements include acceptance from a Finnish school. So first you need to apply for a school, and then you can apply for your residence permit based on studies. But you also need to have a proof of sufficient funds. As I explained earlier, basically it means that you have to have currently at minimum 9,600 euros per year. So 800 euros per month that are counted for your living costs. And I believe this is for the full time of your studies. So let's say you have 3 years of studies, you have to multiply that amount of 9,600 euros by 3. You also need a health insurance, and you also need health insurance. Also, I want to point out what unfortunately does not exist. Some people think that studying in Finland for free is relatively easy and you do not need Finnish language for that, and you can get visa easily for studying in Finland, and that way you can move to Europe easily. Well, this kind of combination of free study, no Finnish, and easy visa from outside of Europe unfortunately does not exist. Often, if you are coming from outside of the EU, you have to pay high tuition fees, and this is becoming even stricter in the future. So in most cases in the future, you always need to pay tuition fees. And even nowadays, if you do not want to pay tuition fees and you want to study in the local language, well, you need good knowledge of Finnish in that case. Some common mistakes that people make when they are planning on studying in Finland. Mistake number 1. Studying in Finland is free for everyone. This is not true. It's only free for Finns and those who have permanent residence in Finland, or for those who come from other EU countries. Mistake number 2. I can fully support myself by working. Unfortunately, if you are new in Finland, finding a job can be incredibly hard. It can be incredibly hard even though you would have been living in Finland for a while, or even if you are a Finn, especially right now with the job situation that we have now. Unfortunately, you cannot rely just on finding a job easily after arriving. You have to have enough savings. It can be possible to find a job depending on your experience and on your contacts, but still, you cannot rely on it fully. Mistake number 3, trusting agencies blindly. There are many foreign agencies who are marketing Finland as a good destination for studies, and they are promising to help you in the process and in obtaining visa and acceptance from the institution where to study. But unfortunately, there have been many scams as well, and many of these agencies are spreading information which is not even honest. And I actually explain this more in detail in my other video. You can check it out here. I give practical examples of what cases we've had in Finland regarding this topic. So I would highly avoid all agencies that are offering you some aid for studying in Finland, because you do not need agencies for that, honestly. You can apply completely on your own if you meet the requirements. It's relatively straightforward, and if you cannot do it on your own, well, most likely you cannot do it with an agency either. Mistake number 4, ignoring Finnish language. Many students suppose they do not need to know Finnish because they are studying in English. Although you would be studying fully in English, you still would need some Finnish in the future if you are planning on staying in Finland and working here in the future, because in most jobs, Finnish is actually required. Learning the local language can improve your options in the future a lot. Also, it's an important part in the integration process. You understand what's happening around you, you can relate to the local people a lot more easily, and you can handle daily situations in Finnish as well. This all makes living in Finland so much easier. And if you do not practice Finnish, and if you do not start your Finnish studies at all, you are kind of left out of the whole society in a way. Although people can help you in English, and most Finns speak English as well, still there's an essential part of the society that you can never access unless you speak the local language. Well, then, for who is this path of studying in Finland actually a good idea? It's a good idea if you are ready to commit long term, and if you have financial stability, and if you are willing to learn Finnish. I would say that these are the 3 most important factors that you need to take into account. And last but not least, I also want to give more practical examples on why learning Finnish matters. Finnish matters for daily life and for integration. It makes it so much easier when you can communicate in the local language. Also, most jobs require Finnish, so learning Finnish actually makes finding a job easier in Finland. And if you are seriously planning to relocate, start learning Finnish even before moving. This is my honest recommendation. It would make moving to Finland already a bit easier, because I'm sure the whole process is not easy. But if you can make it even a little bit easier, well, this can help. If you would like to learn Finnish in a structured way from abroad, online, at your own pace, you can sign up to my Finnish courses. I have Finnish courses for complete beginners, and you can study from the comfort of your own home. You can find more information about these courses via the link in the description. Then, what would I do if I wanted to study in Finland as a foreigner? If I was from another EU country, then I think it would be possible to study in Finland. And next, I would check the official resources that are mentioned below this video. I would look at the exact program requirements and deadlines for the program or programs that I'm interested in. This requires quite a lot of work, I know, because you have to go through many descriptions, you have to figure out what you would like to study. It's not easy, but it's extremely important, because you have to know most likely many months in advance what you want to study, even half a year or even a year before, because you need to apply maybe even just once a year for certain studies. Make sure to have enough savings for living costs, and ideally start learning Finnish already before arriving. What would I do if I would come from another country that doesn't belong to the EU? Well, in that situation, this is more complicated, especially if I wasn't living already in Finland and if I do not have a residence permit in Finland, and if I do not have a budget to pay for high tuition fees. In that case, I actually do not think that making serious plans based on studying in Finland alone at this stage makes sense. Because, as I mentioned, the regulations about the tuition fees are changing very soon. We do not even have at the moment all the information of how much they're gonna be eventually and what the requirements are gonna be. So the regulations may change in the near future. If I lived already in Finland as a foreigner, then the situation luckily is a bit more straightforward, because if I already have my permanent residency in Finland, then I can access most likely many degrees as if I was a Finn, basically. So in that case, maybe I do not have to pay for high fees at all. And of course, if I had enough money to pay even like 20,000 euros and I would be okay with paying that high tuition fees, well, then maybe it makes sense. But if none of these three were through, instead, I would actually focus on more accessible education or job opportunities in my country or in another country where there are more accessible opportunities. And I would also build skills that are globally in high demand. If I'm planning on relocating to Finland or to some other country later in the future, I would maybe study IT or healthcare or engineering, for example, because these are some of the degrees that are highly on demand globally at the moment, and probably in the future as well. And to be honest, saying all this is not easy because, as I mentioned, I'm a Finnish teacher. And of course, I would love to tell you that study Finnish, come to Finland, it's all gonna be fine and you're gonna find a job easily. But I can't tell you that. I mean, I would love to, but I do not want to mislead you. I think that Finland is an amazing country. We have many good things here, but also we have to be very realistic when we are thinking about big decisions like relocation. I hope that this video was helpful. I really hope that you find the links that I'm leaving below helpful and that you can make informed decisions based on that. Thank you for watching, and if you have any other tips for people who are planning on studying in Finland, please leave them in the comments. Thank you. Have a nice day.